eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on. I have seen him in the watchfires of the 100 circling hills. They have built him in an altar in the evening dews and dust. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lips. His day is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea. With a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Our God is marching on.
The Lincoln White House Office, June 20, 1862.
Sir, a delegation of Quakers who call themselves the Progressive Friends are here and would like to speak to you.
Yes, Smith, I have heard of them. Send them in.
Mr. President,
Please, gentlemen, just call me Lincoln.
Joel Bean, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Welcome to my reception room, Bean.
Levi Coffin, it is an honor to meet you, sir.
Coffin, I sincerely hope I don't fall off my pedestal today.
Thomas Garrett, thank you for having us today, Lincoln.
Well, now you're plucking the right note, Garrett, calling me Lincoln.
Barclay White, I echo the sentiment of my friends. We are all honored to be in this place.
Well, Barclay, this place is my favorite name for my home away from home here, which is no home at all. Welcome to all of you. I have heard of your position on slavery. What would you like to speak with me about? I hope it is something to cheer this cheerless heart of mine.
Yes, Lincoln. We have come today in hopes that we could persuade you, in fact, urge you to issue a presidential proclamation to emancipate our slaves from our slave states.
Yes, sir. We hold to the strong belief that in both the sight of God and under our U.S. Constitution, we must act to end this despicable practice. We also believe that you, Mr. President, hold similar sentiments.
Well, gentlemen, if I could end this war and slavery by proclamation, I would do so. But the horse is already out of the barn. How can I order the Confederates to do anything when they have vowed to defy the Union and all for which it stands? If a decree of emancipation could abolish slavery, John Brown would have done the work effectually. Yes, I am deeply sensible of the need for divine assistance in these times which trouble me and the whole country. I have sometimes thought I may be an instrument in God's hands of accomplishing a great work, and I am certainly not unwilling to be. Perhaps, my friends, God's way of accomplishing the end of slavery may be different than either yours or mine.
President Lincoln, we will not cease to pray that God will strengthen and guide you in your decision regarding a way to properly end slavery. As for our conviction, we believe an emancipation proclamation, will establish a precedent for doing so.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will take your good intentions under proper consideration.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir, but there's an issue.
Excuse me, please, gentlemen. Duty calls. Well, Smith, what's the situation?
Well, sir, it's Willie again, I'm afraid, and this time he's leading the Union charge through the hallway and causing quite a stir with the guests. He's on his pony.
Yeehaw!
Well, Smith, I am glad he is just young enough that he can only pretend.
Oh, it's out of the way.
Mr. President, I have engaged the enemy and captured 3 prisoners.
Willie, you've been a good soldier today, but remember, you must not lead the charge through the hallway and disturb our visitors. We wouldn't want them to think the battle is right here in the White House, now would we?
No, sir, I'll take them back outside.
Okay, soldier, now you do that for me, and I will greatly appreciate it.
All right, Father.
I come just now to tell you how I go make regimentals to slush them foes of liberty like them old continentals. But fights met England long ago to save the Yankee eagle. For now I gets my soldier clothes, I'm going to fight with Seagull. Yeah, das is true, I speaks mit you, we goes to fight with Seagull. I come from der Deutsch country, I've worked sometimes at baking, then I keeps a lager beer saloon, and then I go shoemaking. But now I was a soldier, been to save the Yankee eagle, to schloss them tam secession folks, I goes to fight with Seagull. Ja, das is true, I speaks mit you, we goes to fight with Seagull. I get some damn big rifle guns and puts them on my shoulder. Then we march around like a big jack horse or maybe something bolder. I goes off with the volunteers to save the Yankee eagle, to give them rebel fellers fits. I goes to fight with Seagull. Ja, das is true, I speaks with you, we goes to fight with Seagull. Them Deutschen men with Seagull's band and fighting have no rival. And when Jeff Davis men's we meets, we schloss them like the devil. There's only one thing that I feel when battling for the eagle. I won't get no more lager beer when I goes to fight with Seagull. Ja, das is true, I speaks with you, I goes to fight with Seagull. For Russians they give salty pork, I thinks that was a great sell. I better likes the sauerkraut, the Schweizer Käse und pretzel. If Fighting Joe will give us them, we'll save the Yankee eagle. When I put my Frau in preacher looms to go and fight with Seagull. Ja, das is true, I speaks with you, we go to fight with Seagull.
The White House Office, June 28, 1862. Lincoln discusses his health with his good friend from Quincy, Illinois, lawyer Orville Hickman Browning.
Mr. Lincoln, you were looking quite worn down these days. Are you eating well, and are you getting enough rest?
You know how this war has affected us all, Orville. I told Dr. Bellows I can't keep regular hours. I can't take my victuals regular, I just kind of browse around. But I will continue on, Orville. After all, I must. And as I told the doctor, I must die sometime.
May God grant you his power during these trying times, my friend. William, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. It's good to see you as well.
by, Mr. President.
Good day, Browning. Well, Governor, I called you in to say to you that I believe McClellan will not advance his troops in time to head off Lee. He has given every excuse he can think of not to move. He has asked for more men and repeatedly complained of the rain and roads. Apparently, however, Lee can advance at the rate of 25 miles a day under said same conditions. I believe the general would rewrite the scriptures to say the rain falls more on the just than the unjust.
The general's remarks to you have fallen nothing short of mutinous. I cannot understand his rebellious attitude, other than he's merely trying to save his own skin.
Well, that be as it may, I know his kind of warfare will never defeat the Confederacy. Now he has ordered that our troops cannot use the hospital here because it is owned by Mrs. Robert E. Lee. This is the best hospital on the peninsula. I told the physician there that McClellan has made this promise to his troops, and he doesn't want to break this promise. But I think it is wrong, and I will break it for him.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that host all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like the Israelites. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. Looks like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water.
The White House Office, July 22, 1862. Lincoln discusses the Emancipation Proclamation with his cabinet members. Edward Stanton, Secretary of War. Salmon P. Chase, Secretary of the Treasury. Gideon Wells, Secretary of the Navy. Caleb Blood Smith, Secretary of the Interior. William H. Seward, Secretary of State. Montgomery Blair, U.S. Postmaster General, and Edward Bates, U.S. Attorney General.
Gentlemen, shall we continue our discussion from yesterday? Have you considered the question of allowing Union commanders to take whatever they need for subsistence from hostile areas where they may currently be located?
No.
Lincoln, I believe that we all can agree that it's the most logical and efficient means to acquire whatever the commanders need to support our troops.
I quite agree.
Very good, men. Any other comments? Have you considered the question of freed blacks being compensated for laborers in the Army? Many of these men can become a valuable aid to our cause.
I believe that this question goes hand in hand with the idea of compensating slave owners for the property that they have freed, that is, the slaves. We must do both if we wish to appear that we're at least making an attempt to act toward the Confederates in good faith.
Yes, sir. You make a good case when there's so little opportunity for diplomacy, and on those terms I would base my approval.
I would object on the grounds of our continued need to carefully ration our finances. But I will withdraw my objection, in favor of this proposal, for it may indeed act to end the war more quickly and to reduce the endless need for monetary support.
Do any of the rest of the members have any specific discussion regarding this matter you would like to offer?
No.
Now, I want to move on to the subject of colonizing our free blacks in Central America or Africa outside North America. You know, I believe this is a way to end the struggle that exists between our two races. If we can't live together, we should live apart. They have suffered greatly from living among us, and we have suffered from their presence. This would be a far better thing than the struggle between both races that lies ahead.
I greatly oppose such a plan. It will certainly stir up more anger in the South, even though we might gain some support from the Northern. There's certainly enough negative sentiment within my own ranks that would prevent me from lending my support to such an idea.
I'll support your idea, Lincoln. I believe as you do. It would be better for this country to separate itself entirely from the blight that has caused this war. We cannot resolve this issue any other way.
Yes, Blair, I agree with you. My sentiments exactly. This is the best plan for the future.
I've given this much thought, and I agree with Blair and Bates, as well as the President, that it would be a far greater justice to provide the freed slaves their own land to do with what they will.
There are many unanswered questions in this plan, not the least of which would be the sovereignty of the United States, should it continue to exist. If it continues to exist as it, to hold over these people, once they are removed, we cannot settle these questions easily. No, I simply will not support this plan at this time until the plan is complete.
For the sake of expediency, I will table this matter for now. I want to move on to something I feel is far more pressing. I have prepared a draft of a proclamation that will free all the slaves in the Confederate States. I want to read it to you now and ask you to speak freely from your hearts, your opinions and suggestions after you have heard it read. In pursuance of the 6th section of the Act of Congress entitled An Act to Suppress Insurrection and to Punish Treason and Rebellion, to seize and confiscate property of rebels and for other purposes, approved July 17, 1862, and which act and the joint resolution explanatory thereof are herewith published, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, do hereby proclaim to and warn all persons within the contemplation within 6th section to cease participating in aiding, countenancing, or abetting the existing rebellion or any rebellion against the United States government, and to return their proper allegiance to the United States on pain of the forfeiture and seizures as within and by said 6th section provided. And I hereby make known that it is my purpose upon the next meeting of Congress to again recommend the adoption of a practical measure for tending pecuniary aid to the free choice of rejection of any and all states which may then be recognizing and practically sustaining the authority of the United States, and which may then have voluntarily adopted or thereafter may voluntarily adopt gradual abolishment of slavery within each state or states. That the practical object is to practically restore thenceforward to maintain the constitutional relation between the general government in each and all the states wherein that relation is now suspended or disturbed. And for this object, the war, as it has been, will be prosecuted. And as a fit and necessary military measure for effecting this object, I, as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States, do order and declare that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or states wherein the constitutional authority of the United States shall not then be practically recognized, submitted to, and maintained, shall then, thenceforward, and forever be free. What are your views, gentlemen?
Lincoln, I believe you should move full ahead to expedite the release of this proclamation.
Yes, immediately.
Such a proclamation may be a matter of great danger, for it could greatly unsettle the nation's financial condition. A better approach might be to have the generals to organize and arm the slaves to avoid a massacre by the rebels. However, despite my reservations, I do promise to give your proclamation a hearty support.
Well, I really appreciate your support, Chase, but I am not ready to put guns in the hands of former slaves.
Somehow, I see disaster if you release such a proclamation now, Mr. President. It will only be seen as a political instrument by the voting public, and it could decrease your chances of re-election.
I must strongly object to the release of an Emancipation Proclamation at this time. We've not yet won a victory in the war. If you release such a declaration before we gain the upper hand on the Confederacy, they will see it as nothing but a weak and fruitless attempt to turn sentiment in favor of the Union. And it will increase the anarchy in the South. But more than this, our enemies abroad who take the same vein as the South will be emboldened. They will perceive this as a desperate last attempt to eradicate the very means by which they themselves greatly profit. And they will throw their full support behind the Confederates. We must win a decisive victory before this document is made public.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is all I have for now.
The White House Office, the evening of July 22, 1862. New York newspaperman Thurlow Weed visits the President.
Sir, Mr. Thurlow Weed to see you.
Thurlow, it's good to see you again. Come in. What art thou that usurps this time of night? I charge thee speak.
Question it, Horatio. You know why I'm here, my friend. Since I have been rousted by my dear friend, Mr. Seward, who has, as Shakespeare wrote, assailed my ears that are so fortified against your story.
Yes, you believe Seward has a point about the timing of an Emancipation Proclamation.
Yes, I believe it could be an unpredictable response, if not a dangerous gamble to release the document now, knowing as we do of the resolve of the South and the European sympathy. I would not have come here tonight if I didn't feel a sense of obligation to express my reservations about the release of this document. An Emancipation Proclamation cannot be enforced, and it will only alienate the border states, and it could prolong the war.
Thurlow, you've made some good points of argument. I must say I am moving in the direction you have advocated. Once again, I gain benefit from your great calm practicality that guides me to a better way.
Abraham, your wit is a gift from God and never ceases to surprise me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Thurlow.
The White House Office, late July 1862. President Lincoln invites his old Illinois friend, Leonard Swett, to the White House to discuss the Emancipation Proclamation.
Sir, Mr. Leonard Swett.
Well, thank you, Leonard, for coming all the way out here from Illinois.
Good to see you, Lincoln.
I hope your train trip was not too tiring. How is the missus doing? I hope she is well. Have a seat.
Well, thank you, sir. My wife is doing quite well, and she continues to keep all things in order at home. My trip here was rather uneventful, except for a holdup in the city of Pana. That city, if you remember, Lincoln, has 4 railroads, and getting through it took over 2 hours waiting for a track to clear.
Yes, Swett, I went through that bustling burg a time or two during my debates with Douglas. Well, you look none the worse for wear, still holding up your cause to run for the seat in Illinois. You know, I plan to nominate Judge Davis for Supreme Court here. You could take his seat.
Yes, I know Judge Davis is chomping at the bit for that crown. I believe I have a good chance to fill his position.
Well, Leonard, that's good. What I wanted to speak with you about is the issuing and timing of this Emancipation Proclamation. I have been wrestling with the whys and whens, and I can think of no better man than you to talk to about my thoughts on this. We spent a lot of time together out on the circuit, and you know my mind, and I know yours as well as anyone, my friend.
Yes, Lincoln, you have my ear, and you have my thoughts if you desire both, my friend.
Well, it's like this. In the first place, I intend to issue this proclamation at some point. That much for sure I am ready to do. My intentions are motivated by the knowledge that we must keep the Union together. If we are going to keep the Union together, not only now but in the future, we're going to have to outlaw slavery. We must settle the question that has placed a dark cloud over the nation and placed us in conflict with one another and the Constitution. It has come to the place where we cannot solve the slavery issue without forcing the South by proclamation and later by constitutional amendment to cease holding all slaves. That's what I know for sure, Sweat. My paramount struggle is to save the Union. I have considered neither to save nor destroy slavery, yet I believe we cannot save the Union and keep slavery, for it is the burr under the saddle of the horse. It is the very thing that is causing this conflict. On the other hand, there is the problem of issuing the proclamation before we have won a decisive victory in the war. I am well aware of the consequences of this. There is also the problem of the border states, which may find such a proclamation unpalatable. The South will certainly look at it as nothing more than a political device. Seward believes that it will be considered by the Confederates and foreign nations as our last shriek on the retreat. I am praying that we will have a decisive victory before the first of next year, for I have it in mind to issue the proclamation by that time. If we do not issue the proclamation by January 1st of next year, we will have missed the most beneficial time to overcome all the political turmoil and turnover. If I can push our Union commanders to take full advantage of our military capabilities, we can have that victory, and all this desperation will end. That is what this proclamation hangs on, to be an effective instrument of ending this terrible, terrible war.
Well, Lincoln, you have made a good case, and you have provided the evidence on both sides. May the verdict bring a decision for the earliest possible peace.
Well, thank you for hearing my case, Leonard. It has certainly helped me to think more clearly on the subject and broaden my view of this muddy terrain upon which we slip and slide.
Glad to be of assistance, sir.
Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
The sun is sinking low in the sky above the Shokan. The pines and the willows know soon we will part. There's a whisper in the wind of promises unspoken, and a love that will always remain. return to the sound of your laughter, the magic of moving as one, and a time we'll remember long ever after, the moonlight and music and dancing are done. Will we climb the hills once more? Will we walk the woods together? Will I feel you holding me close once again? Will every song we've sung stay with us forever? Will you dance in my dreams or my arms until then? Under the moon, the mountains lie sleeping. Over the lake, the stars shine. They wonder if you and I will be keeping the magic and music, or leave them behind. My thoughts will return to the sound of your laughter, the magic of moving as one, and a time we'll remember long ever after, the moonlight and music and dancing are done.
Home of Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, August 30th, 1862. President Lincoln and his wife Mary attend an informal dinner with the Secretary and his wife Ellen. Ellen, the dinner was absolutely divine. The President and I so seldom have time now or opportunity to dine with our friends. We are so appreciative of your hospitality.
Mrs. Lincoln, we are so grateful to have both of you here with us tonight. Would you like to retire to the parlor?
Why, that would be absolutely wonderful. I am sure that the President would like to discuss with Mr. Stanton their preoccupation with this war.
Hope has been holding well the last 2 days against Jackson and Longstreet. I am hopeful that we will finally secure a victory.
Yes, I'm confident that nothing but foul play could lose us this battle.
Well, I hope you are right, Edwin. We need to win this battle. I ordered McClellan to aid Pope's cause, and if he does, I know we can succeed.
Succeed we shall, for we must. Shall we join the ladies?
Yes, of course, Stanton. This night has afforded me more comfort than I have seen in many days.
The Telegraph Office, September 1, 1862, 7:30 p.m.
Dispatch from McClellan's Pope's forces pushed back to Centerville. I will be able to hold my men.
hold my men.
Lincoln speaks with John Hay, his trusted secretary.
Sir, you have news?
Well, John, we are whipped again, I'm afraid. Here's the dispatch from McClellan. Army pushed back to Centerville will be able to hold my men. I don't like that expression. I don't like him saying his men need holding.
This news is not good news, but it is not all bad either. We still have a strong presence, and McClellan still has his entire force.
What McClellan has done or failed to do is unpardonable, but he is still essential to the cause.
Our wagon is the very best, the running gear is good, stuffed around the sides with cotton and made of southern wood. Carolina is the driver with Georgia by her side. Virginia holds the flag up and we'll all take a ride. Tennessee and Texas are also in the ring. They wouldn't have a government where cotton wasn't king. Alabama and Florida have long ago replied. Mississippi and Louisiana are anxious for the ride. So wait for the wagon, the dissolution wagon. The South is the wagon and we'll all take a ride. Old Lincoln and his congressmen with Seward by his side put old Scott in the wagon just for to take a ride. McDowell was the driver, to cross Bull Run he tried, but there he left the wagon for Beauregard to ride. Manassas was the battleground, the field was fair and wide. The Yankees thought they'd whip us out and on to Richmond ride, but when they met our Dixie boys, their danger they espied. They wheeled them out for Washington and didn't wait to ride. So wait for the wagon, the dissolution wagon. The South is the wagon and we'll all take a ride. Wait for the wagon, the dissolution wagon. The South is the wagon and we'll all take a ride.
The White House office, early September 1862. Lincoln sits at his desk and writes a memorandum to himself.
I am almost ready to say that God wills this contest and wills that it shall not end yet. After all, God could have either saved or destroyed the Union without a human contest, yet He allowed the war to begin, and having begun, He could give the final victory to either side any day. Yet the contest proceeds. It is quite possible that God's purpose is something different from the purpose of either party. McClellan is the chief alarmist and marplot of the Army. I am tired of his weak, whiny, vague, and incorrect dispatches. Yet, I must have McClellan because he is a superb organizer and excellent engineer. I must have him to reorganize the Army of the Potomac and bring it out of chaos. McClellan has the Army with him, and I must reinstate him as Chief Commander. He must come to defend the capital.
The White House office, early September 1862. Lincoln speaks to General McClellan.
General, please sit down.
Sir.
General, I know you received my dispatch, and I'm glad you made an appearance here. I want to talk to you about the future of our Army and what I believe is our way forward.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lincoln, and what would you say that would be? I have apparently not met with your satisfaction with regard to the many actions I have deemed necessary and proper to carry out. How then will I be able to please your desires in this new plan?
McClellan, I want you to take full control of the Army once again. I am reinstating you as Chief Commander. I need your skills in organizing to get our men back on their feet, and to make sure the Confederates do not invade the capital. Whatever differences we have had in the past, we must both put aside for the sake of a Union victory. The men trust you, and you can do much to get them going.
I would consent to such a plan under the condition that I be allotted additional troops so that I could be assured of more favorable odds.
I am prepared to give you all the power we can muster in troops and supplies to take Lee's army. You know as well as I, we have our backs against the wall, and we must win and push the Confederates out.
Very well. I will accept this assignment, but I only consent to do so for my country's sake and with the humble hope that God has called me to it.
General, I am placing full trust in your capabilities and your willingness to defend the Union.
No more auction block for me. No more, no more, no more auction block for me. Many thousand gone. No more drivers lash for me. No more, no more, no more drivers lash for me. Many thousand gone. No more children stole from me. No more, no more, no more children stole from me. Many thousand gone. No more slavery chains for me. No more, no more, no more slavery chains for me. Many thousand gone. No more auction block for me. No more, no more, no more auction block for me. Many thousand gone.
The Telegraph Office, September 17, 1862. Lincoln awaits a message from the dispatcher during the Battle of Antietam.
General McClellan. Battle fierce at Sharpsburg. Confederate center pierced. Union pushes over Antietam Creek. Hill's division aids to Lee at Harper's Ferry. Confederates retreat from Maryland.
This is the sign I have awaited, and the sure course I must follow.
The White House Office, September 22, 1862. Lincoln meets with his cabinet to announce the issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation.
Gentlemen, I want to share with you an excerpt from a book sent to me by its author, Artemus Ward. The selection is called High-Handed Outrage at Utica. In the fall of 1856, I showed my show in Utica, a truly great city in the state of New York. The people gave me a cordial reception. The press was loud in her praises. One day, as I was given a description of my beasts and snakes in my usual flowery style, what was my scorn and disgust to see a big burly feller walk up to the cage containing my wax figures of the Lord's Last Supper and seize Judas Iscariot by the feet and drag him out on the ground. He then commenced for to pound him as hard as he could. What under the sun are you about? Cried I. Says he, what did you bring this pusillanimous cuss here for? And he hit the wax figure another tremendous blow on the head. Says I, you egregious arse, that there's a wax figure, a representation of the false apostle. Says he, that's all very well for you to say, but I tell you, old man, that Judas Iscariot can't show himself in Utica with impunity by a darn sight. With which observation he caved in Judas's head. The young man belonged to one of the first families in Utica. I sued him, and the jury brought in a verdict of arson in the 3rd degree.
Oh, you're killing me. Anyway.
Gentlemen, you know my intent and the reasons for my delay. I have been awaiting a sign from the Almighty, and have pledged that when I can know His will, I will do it. We could not issue the proclamation until we had a better showing in the war. But I believe the time has come. I wish it were a better time. I wish we were in a better condition. But now I can redeem the promise I made to myself and my Maker. I have determined to issue the proclamation this 100 days before January 1st of next year. I will accept any criticisms of any expressions used or any other minor matter. It is my intention to continue to support and promote compensation to slave owners who emancipate their slaves. I would also like to support colonization of the black race outside the country. I am unsure of the expediency of this document to be promoted, and I have my own doubts about its success. I know very well that many others might, in this matter, as well as others, do better than I can. And if I were satisfied that the public confidence was more fully possessed by any one of them than me, he should have it. I would gladly yield it to him. Since, however, this is not possible, I must do the best I can and bear the responsibility of taking the course I feel I ought to take.
might I suggest making these small changes here and here?
The proclamation does not indeed mark out the course I would prefer, but I'm ready to take it just as it's written and stand by it with all my heart.
I must oppose this proclamation just on the grounds it'll sorely influence the border states and their armies. And it could very likely strengthen the Democrats in this fall's congressional elections.
Well, I have considered the first of these dangers and discounted it. As for the second, it has not much weight with me. Governor, will you see that this gets copied and officially published?
Yes, President Lincoln.
Life is past, and evening comes at last. It brings me a dream of a once happy day, of merry forms I've seen upon the village green, sporting with my old dog Tray. Old dog Tray's ever faithful, grief cannot drive him away. He's gentle, he is kind, I'll never, never find a better friend than old dog Tray. The forms I called my own have vanished one by one. The loved ones, the dear ones have all passed away. Their happy smiles have flown, their gentle voices gone. I've nothing left but old dog Tray. Old dog Tray's ever faithful, grief cannot drive him away. He's gentle, he is kind, I'll never, never find a better friend than old dog Tray. Old dog Tray's ever faithful, grief cannot drive him away. He's gentle, he is kind, I'll never, never find a better friend than old dog Tray. A better friend than old dog Tray.
President Lincoln, seated in his office in the late fall of 1862, and mulling over the voices of dissent over the Emancipation Proclamation, the war, Indian uprisings, and other pressing matters, and answering his critics. The voice of General Pope.
He now wants me to, and I must, accept the assignment of Indian uprising. But I am outraged at the President's feeble, cowardly, and shameful failure to defend me from my critics. There will be a general Indian war all along the frontier unless immediate steps are taken to put a stop to it. It is my purpose utterly to exterminate the Sioux if I have the power to do so.
The voice of Episcopal Bishop Henry B. Whipple.
What we have done to the Native people's way of life is unforgivable. I hope and pray to somehow begin a new policy of peace and honesty with this wronged race of people.
The voice of Minnesota Governor Alexander Ramsey.
The Sioux are assassins and ravagers of wives, sisters, and daughters. The state of Minnesota will not tolerate their presence in any number, in any condition.
The voice of the War Report.
350 whites have been massacred, and 303 Sioux men are condemned to die.
The voice of Minnesota Senator Morton S. Wilkinson.
The Indians must be punished according to law, or they will die murdered without law.
39 of the worst Sioux offenders will die.
The voice of Governor Ramsey.
If you had hanged more Indians, you would have larger majority of congressmen.
I could not afford to hang men for votes.
The voice of the Republicans from the left.
Will the President go back on his promise to issue the final proclamation on January 1st? He must commit to a radical program. He appointed General Burnside instead of General Hooker. This is not a good sign.
The voice of the border state congressmen and the South.
Peace again on the old terms of the Constitution of the United States. What will you give us in return? Payment for loyal slaves and rightful seats in Congress?
The proclamation will not free a single Negro beyond our military reach. There was a case where a lawyer tried to argue that a calf had 5 legs by calling the tail a leg. But the decision of the judge was that calling the tail a leg did not make it a leg. And the calf had 4 legs after all. So, issuing a proclamation does not free slaves. But I will attempt to pull this country back together if compensated emancipation is what it takes.
Burnside's blunder across the Potomac into Fredericksburg on December 13 brings defeat and disdain for the Lincoln administration. Voice of the Chicago Tribune.
Failure of the Army, weight of taxes, depreciation of money, want of cotton, increasing national debt, deaths in the Army, no prospect of success, the continued closure of the Mississippi River, all combine to produce the existing state of despondency and desperation. The war is drawing toward a disastrous and disgraceful termination.
Voice of Senator Grimes.
Lincoln is only a toe string of a president who had to be propped up with strong, sturdy rods in the shape of cabinet ministers.
Voice of Joseph Medill, Chicago Tribune.
Seward must be got out of the cabinet. He is Lincoln's evil genius. He has been president de facto and has kept a sponge saturated with chloroform under Uncle Abe's nose.
Voice of Jacob Collamer.
The president has no cabinet in the true sense of the word.
Voice of Secretary Chase to the radical anti-slavery wing of Lincoln's party.
There is a backstairs influence which often controls the apparent conclusion of the cabinet.
Voice of the radical anti-slavery wing of Lincoln's party.
Smith is nothing but a dough-face, and Bates is a fossil of the Solarian era. But Seward never had his heart in the war. He tried to negotiate with Confederate envoys during the secession crisis. He opposed making a stand at Fort Sumter. He has been McClellan's principal defender. He opposed and then delayed the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. He and Thurlow Weed undermined the candidacy of Radical General Wadsworth for governor of New York.
Voice of Secretary of State Seward.
They may do as they please about me, but they shall not put the President in a false position on my account. I hereby resign the office of Secretary of State of the United States and have the honor that this resignation be immediately accepted.
Voice of Secretary of Treasury Salmon P. Chase.
I also will resign the Treasury.
Here are my letters, gentlemen of the radical anti-slavery wing, to McClellan, which I will read to you, detailing that we consistently sustained him to the best of our powers. In the end, his desire not to move could no longer be tolerated by this government. As for Seward and Chase, I will not accept their resignations. They remind me of how I used to carry 2 pumpkins on horseback, one in each end of the bag to balance one another. I can ride on now. I have a pumpkin in each end of the bag.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom. Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plains. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the stars, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. We are springing to the call of our brothers gone before. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll fill our vacant ranks with 1,000,000 free men more. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the stars, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will welcome to our numbers the loyal, true, and brave. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. And although they may be poor, not a man shall be a slave. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the stars, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. So we're springing to the call from the east and from the west.
It is late afternoon on January 1, 1863. President Lincoln has spent most of the day shaking hands with members of the diplomatic corps, many officers and diplomats during the annual New Year's Eve Day celebration in the Blue Room of the White House. Lincoln is now seated at his desk with his secretaries, John Hay and John Nicolay, waiting to sign the final draft of the Emancipation Proclamation.
I never in my life felt more certain I was doing right than I do in signing this paper. But my arm is so stiff and numb from so many handshakes downstairs, I'm not sure I can control the pen. Now, this signature is one that will be closely examined, and if they see my hand trembled, they will say, he had some compunctions. But anyway, it is going to be done.